we can just get right into it.
Just so you know, I'm also wearing my Bibliomania t-shirt underneath. It's just
Love it.
chilly here.
Love it. It is
It's
not chilly here.
I don't know. We're also, like, sick, so, like, the house is weird.
Well, outside it's nice today. We were at, the field earlier today, and it's 84 degrees outside. And there was
Mm-mm.
like, open field, barely any shade, and that sun was just like beating down on us. And, so I got a little tired just from the heat earlier.
Mm-mm. Oh, it's beverage time.
Yeah, yeah. Thank goodness it
What are
was only
you
an
drinking?
hour.
What are
Oh my
you drinking?
goodness. Okay, this is my new favorite little drink. This is the iced peach green tea lemonade, and I add one
Mhm.
scoop of matcha. And it's just
Mm.
delicious. It just feels so refreshing.
Very nice.
Yeah, it is very nice. What do you got there?
This is supposed to be a milky Earl Grey boba, but
Oh,
Jesus thought I deserved a sweet cream foam thing treat, and I don't like sweet foam cream treat, whatever that is. So it's extra
oh,
sweet for me, but he went and got me boba, so I can't be mad about it.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
People love their boba.
But
They love it.
it's just sweeter than I intended.
That's why I like this. It's not that sweet at
Mhm.
all. I don't like I don't like when things are overly sweet. It
If it
makes me
didn't
feel
have, like,
sick.
cream in it, it wouldn't be so sweet.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a coffee update.
Oh god, are you drinking coffee or not drinking coffee?
I'm drinking alternative coffee. My brother, my
Are you
brother and
drinking
my
mushroom coffee?
I am my brother and my oldest daughter drink mushroom coffee, and he drinks this brand called Evolve or something like that, and he gave me like a whole bag of it a couple months ago, and it's good. But then I went online and found this other coffee called Joey. They call themselves the original coffee alternative, and I gotta tell you, that stuff is delicious. It is absolutely delicious. I
For
love it.
anybody for
I
anybody
love
just
it.
listening who cannot see my face of horror and disgust right now,
It's just so good.
while I
I
take a
either
sip of my Cafe Bustelo.
I either add some unsweetened almond milk creamer or unsweetened coconut superfood creamer. It's just so good. I love it. Anyway, that's my new thing.
I don't even know what to say to that. I don't know what to say to that.
I knew that it would amuse you and give you
I'm
the
just
grimy face.
it's disgusting, Naomi. It looks disgusting.
Have you seen my coffee? My Joey coffee? It looks delicious. It's amazing.
I see this stuff that I have a coworker who I have a coworker who drinks all that kind of crap, and he, like,
Mhm.
juices, and he has a whole stack full of herbal remedies, and it's a little ridiculous,
Oh my
and
goodness.
he drinks that crap, and it looks vile, absolutely vile.
It doesn't, you know what it looks like? It looks like you're drinking hot chocolate. It's just you just scoop it, put it in your
So
cup.
you're gonna ruin both coffee and hot chocolate for me?
Yeah. 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 I mean, if we're just talking about like how it looks, I mean, it looks like coffee, but like when it's in the bag or you just scoop it, it's like hot chocolate powder. That's what it looks like, you know?
Okay. I
You know?
mean, if you're happy,
Yeah.
are you happy?
I am. It's just so good. It's such a nice taste. It's very smooth. I love it. I love
I
it.
feel like you're really trying to sell this, and I don't know if you I feel like you're working
Listen,
really hard on this one, Amy.
I just want to say that I too was shocked. I too did not believe it was going to be any good. And I was like pleasantly surprised. So I'm not trying to tell anyone to switch over to drinking, this Joey coffee and no, they're not paying me to talk about it. But if you want to, So, enjoy any type of coffee you want to drink. But I'm enjoying Joey. Okay. Welcome back.
Welcome back to season
Welcome back.
4. 4?
Season 4. Right
Season
about that.
4. It is
Yeah.
season 4 of TBR Lowdown. You didn't think we were coming back, did you? Because 'Cause we've had a heck of an end to season 3.
Yes.
We're here.
Yeah.
We are here. We are here.
I mean,
We
we've
will
had a slightly longer than our typical summer break,
it's
but
been
here we are.
we've had we've had a busy summer.
We
We'll get into
have.
that. We'll get into that. But, what have you been reading? Or what have you finished?
Okay. I finished the amazing Western called The Shootist by Glendon Swarkoot. I think that's how you say his name. I could be wrong. The Shootist was just so good. All right. So we're with, what is his name? One of these famous shooters. He everyone knows who he is. And he goes to this town because he wants to find this
Famous
doctor
students.
to check him out. And the doctor gives him very grave news. He's got the cancer and he's a dying. And he tells the doctor, hey, 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 I don't mind if you tell people that I'm here. I really don't want you to, but I don't mind. But do not tell them that I'm sick unless you want people to come in here, guns ablazing, thinking they can get one up on me. And so we're going through this story, right? And what you see is like, even when somebody is like on their deathbed and people start coming around with the what trying to make you believe that they're there to help you, support you, care for you, help you get your affairs in order, they're just trying to make a buck off of you. And he is calling each and every one of them out. And I loved it. He was just so strong and so smart, so vigilant. And I just loved his whole attitude about it. He was getting those people right in line. Even the preacher was trying to make a buck off of him. So this was like a really fun read. I had a good time. I had a really
I
good
love
time.
I love your love of
I
westerns.
just love me a good Western. So anyway, if you're into Westerns, if you haven't read The Shootist, read it. I also have The Last Shootist, which was written by his son. So I'll probably read
Oh,
that in the next couple of weeks. So anyway, The Shootist.
the shootist. I feel like I just, like, look at Naomi and I don't think, "You know what this girl's gonna love? Westerns." I don't know why. It's just not what my brain is,
I know I grabbed a few
Uh,
more westerns at my last McKay haul. I think I got like 3 or 4 more westerns. So yeah.
well, I have, like, 2 random piles of books that are, I guess, randomly sorted into things. I don't know. Anyway, I'll start with something I recently finished, which I'm still collecting all my thoughts on so that I can add it into a vlog, but we'll talk about it a little bit here, is that I actually finished this time, did not read DNF it, The Little Friend by Donna Tartt, and
Oh
I really liked it. So, like, you remember I didn't like this. I thought it was going to
yeah,
be, like I found it boring. I didn't really understand where we were going. It felt plotless. It just felt like a character study. I didn't get the point. It also felt vaguely racist in like a weird way. The language was strange. It was like jarring to my ear and all this
yeah.
stuff. And I started with that same premise as I was rereading it. And I still think that there is this hump of getting over the language because this
Mm.
is like 1960s Mississippi, right? So
Oh, hello. There you go.
there's, like, going to be certain language in here. But the fact that it's written in 2002 by a white lady, I think gets very jarring to a 2024 mindset. Okay? There's a lot of dates in that.
Sure.
Um, so it takes a little bit to get used to and to, like, kind of make sure that she's using things in an appropriate way. Does that make sense? Like, it makes sense in the context, and it's not being done in some other more problematic way, I guess.
Yeah.
So I kinda just, like, I kept going. I said, "Okay, I'm gonna trust Donna," and I'm glad I did. So essentially, this is billed as kind of like a murder mystery, but it's not that. It's a story about, like, families and poverty and commentary on class and socioeconomics and sort of the failing South. like Old Glory, white trash versus, you know,
Mhm.
black people, Southern values, all that stuff, all that whole like mishmash of stuff that's happening, 100 years post Civil War. What does the South look like, right? And it's framed in this narrative of this family of basically women because the one real man in the family has left. Actually, there were two men, and they're no longer in the picture, really. So you have we open with this Mother's Day with all these women, and at the end of this Mother's Day, this little boy is killed. He's found hanging in a tree, and so
Mm.
nobody knows who killed him. And his little sister, like once we get into the main story, uh, is grown up. She doesn't remember him, but obviously the entire family is touched by the loss of her brother Robin, and she is determined to figure out who killed him. And that sets off this entire adventure. It sets off this coming of age story. The little girl's Harriet. She has an older sister named Allison. She has a mother who's absolutely like checked out. She's so freaking depressed, Charlotte, and she has this gaggle of a grandmother and great aunts that they all work together in to like keep to raise the kids, right? Because her father has moved out of state with his banking job and he has a mistress, and I think like everybody knows about the mistress but the mother. Um, it's pretty well known, but
Yeah.
they used to be a very wealthy family. Their home has since fallen into rack and ruin and has now burned down because their dad, who was like a judge or something, let it fall to pieces. And they're kind of juxtaposed against this other family that's like poor white trash, and they have their own problems, and they kind of all come to the head. And it's a very difficult book to summarize very quickly because there's a lot to go that goes into it. But I really, actually, really enjoyed this. I think if you give it time and you let it simmer and you let Donna Tartt to lead you into the story and
Mhm.
trust that all the things that feel kind of wacky have a reason, and are gonna kind of get explained about why they're there by the end,
Yeah.
you will enjoy it. It's definitely more mature, I think, than The Secret History. It's more complex in its writing. It's definitely a fantastic like example of so if you've do you remember I went down that rabbit hole of watching Donna Tartt interviews and stuff?
Yes, I
She's like
do.
a huge, huge Dickens fan, and you can see
Ah,
how Dickens has influenced her
influence. Mhm.
writing in this. It's very Dickensian in terms of, like, how it's written. The language is really beautiful. It's complex characters. There's so many characters, it's almost too many characters at times, but they all are important, and I think a lot of people find it disappointing when they do finish it because it doesn't have a tidy end, but it does have a messy end that makes sense for a really young girl as your narrator
Mm,
to have
mhm.
learned all these lessons. It's a lot of, like, grief, death, coming to terms with your first real encounters with grief and death,
Yeah.
realizing that, you things aren't the way that you thought they were when you were a kid, like, you're in that transitional phase of life and, like, your entire outlook on life changes,
Yeah.
um, and then just the setting is very, very interesting too, because there's so many other just, like, forces kinda always in tension with each other around the kids, and I think having a child narrator makes it really interesting, um,
Interesting.
to explore those things. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. It's not
Wow.
solely her, there are a couple different point of views, but the predominant narrator of the story is Harriet. Um, yeah, but I think billing it like, even the back of the book kind of bills it like a murder mystery. It's not a murder mystery. Just
Huh.
it's not. Um, there is a murder, there is a bit of a mystery to it, but that's not the point of the book.
See,
So,
and that's why you can't always pay attention to how they're, like, billing
mhm.
things when they're trying to market it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think it's also a testament to, like, sometimes it's good to go back to books that you've DNF'd. Like, I
Yeah.
think there are definitely books that are terrible and you're never gonna like them, or terrible for you and you're never gonna like them. And then there's other ones that maybe it's much clearer that it's more of like a missed connection. Like,
For sure.
you just it's the wrong time. So, this was definitely the wrong time.
Well, I would like for you to know that I just ordered that. So, because my every time I go to McKay, I look for The Little Friend. I did find The Secret History, I don't know, earlier this year or the end of last year, but I never see The Little Friend, so I just ordered that because I would like to have read all three of her because I've only read The Goldfinch. So I would like
Mhm.
to read the other two before, hopefully, soon her next novel comes out.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely due for one. She writes every about 10 years, so
Yeah,
we're now overdue for one technically, I think.
exactly.
Um, but I've now officially read all 3. I'm gonna reread The Goldfinch maybe, like, October, November,
Hmm.
um,
Love that. I
but
really love that book.
and then I'll try to, like, rank them. I think I think The Secret History is good, but I think since I'm reading it as a much older person, like, the first time I
Hmm.
read it, I was older. I think a lot of people have read it when they're, like, I don't know, 15, 16, or, like, maybe, like, 18, 19, 20, like, they're in a
Mm,
different phase of life,
for
and,
sure.
um I think it hits a little maybe it hits differently then, I can't tell, I didn't read it then, but I appreciate it, I appreciate the way she constructed the story, and I appreciated the way she twists it at the end, it just really amps things up, but I don't think that it's got the same skill as something like A Little Friend or, The Goldfinch, which is
Hmm.
definitely much better writing, which it should be, it's 10 years later, and then it's another 20 years later, it's should
Right.
be better and better writing,
Absolutely.
uh, but, uh the Little Friend, I think, was not very well received overall. It was very, like, mixed, and I think it's just a much more complex story, and if you were looking for something that was more along the lines of The Secret History, you're really not gonna get that. This is
Right.
something else. It's not totally plotless, but it's not plot driven at all. It's totally character driven, and you get way deeper into your characters, I think, than you do in The Secret History. But you have more of them, so it can be a little bit overwhelming. Um, I think it's a much there's a lot more depth into it, and the more you think about The Little Friend, I think there's more to parse out of it than you can out of The Secret History. I think it's just an
Mm.
enjoyable book. I think that there is stuff in there. She's saying something in all of her books, but I think she says more, I think, as she gets advances in her writing.
Yeah, because just when you are talking about Donna Tartt, or when others are talking about Donna Tartt, they always mention either The Secret History or The Goldfinch. You rarely hear anything about The Little Friend. I also wonder what else was published the same year The Little Friend came out that may have overshadowed that book.
It's an interesting question. We'd have to do a little
Yeah,
sleuthing to figure that out. But it's definitely like a very, very mixed bag, it seems,
yeah.
between even just with like real critics. I mean, it was back in 2002, so I mean, you didn't really have the the social media aspect of things. I feel like I have a
Hmm.
hair somewhere. So you really just had, like, the news critics and then just people. So I think
Right.
there were, like, real publishing critics, like book critics
That
that
were like,
really liked
no.
it, and then there were a lot that said no. And then I
Hmm.
think general public, this might be kind of over the head. It doesn't have the same mass appeal perhaps as
Yeah,
also it's
yeah.
2002. I don't know, what were we reading then? We might
Right,
not be reading something like this.
right. I wonder, did it make the New York Times bestseller? Because a lot of
Oh, I don't know.
readers look to those kinds of lists to choose their books. So if it
Would
didn't
have
even
to
make the New York Times bestseller list, then that's also um, how
eh,
many people probably didn't know about it.
excuse
So
me, I
there's also
imagine
that.
that it would just simply because, it's Donna Tartt, but maybe it
Yeah.
didn't because I don't know. Also, can I just say the one thing I hate about the Goldfinch is that Goldfinch is not published by Knopf, it's published by somebody else.
Hmm.
And I like these. My Secret History is the same, like, sort of skinny, sort of tall
Uh huh.
paperback with, like, the nice paper.
Yeah.
Um, I wish that they all match.
Yeah. Oh well.
Like, I
Well.
wish that when they got published, the Goldfinch was
Hmm.
published, it was published to sort of match.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have some sort of reason they couldn't have done that.
I'm sure. I'm sure. But the Goldfinch is beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it.
Mhm.
I love it. Well, For those of you who are new, welcome to TBR Lowdown with Naomi and Alyssa. This is our fourth season, and
Mhm.
who knew we make it this far? Time
It's
just
true.
kind of just, and here we
Keeps
are 4 years
going.
later. Yeah, yeah.
We
So
just keep talking about books.
just keep talking about them, hoping that you keep reading them.
I keep running out of ideas for what to recommend to you, but we're here.
It happens. I mean, it happened today. I was like, what have I read? Do I have anything? Of course I have things, but it's just like it always feels like there's like a well of emptiness. Uh-huh. So
Not a well of loneliness.
not a oh, speaking of the well of loneliness, that book is picking up steam. I
Again?
have yes, I have heard, and let me tell you, every time someone talks about it, I film the link to our discussion about it on TBR Lowdown. But I have seen so many people um talk about that book. Either they had just read it or they kept hearing about it and bought the book and were getting ready to read it. So it is definitely making the rounds. This is the first time that I've seen so many people talk about that book.
I think it was like Sapphic something reads September Sapphic. I think there was like a or we're in the middle of something too, so that could be part of it.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
how like the thing I'm really bad at paying attention to, because I just read books.
yeah.
um, all those different what would you call them? Themes? Trends?
Ye not trends, like
Read-alongs?
special something. I don't know. What do you call those things? They're not holidays, but there's a word for it. But these two readers don't know what that word is. So,
No, I just read books. But I will say, if people read The Well of Loneliness and they want a little bit more on Radcliffe Hall, The Secret Lives of Wives is I think Radcliffe Hall is maybe the first writer that's in that book, that they talk about. It's very interesting.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm glad to see it picking up more steam. That makes me happy.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I've been seeing a lot of lately, and I know that we talk about this a lot, and this is just so anybody's new here with the welcome back episode. It's just us chit-chatting and catching up and getting used to recording again.
Mm-hmm.
And to introduce you to us in case you've never met us before.
Indeed.
Uh, so something that I've seen a lot of is backlash to book talk seems to be making a wave again
Huh?
through the videos. A lot of like
What?
book talk has ruined everything. You know, everything's cyclical, and so
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this a lot, about why I particularly don't like book talk and why book talk. I think we talked about this. I can't tell anymore. We leave so many voice notes between you and Jessica. I
I
can't
know.
remember.
I know.
And, who I've said stuff to. But I was reading our pick, our read from our reading schedule, I Who Have Never Known Men,
Mm-hmm.
and I enjoyed it.
Me
We'll talk
too.
about it more in a
Yep.
future episode. But I did not enjoy it as much as I think I would have if
Mm-hmm.
book docs didn't exist. And that's because I've come to the conclusion that I very much don't like short form content for things like books
For sure.
because I get so inundated with videos on the same thing, whether it's the same books that everybody's like popular commercial books everyone's complaining about, or whether it's obscure indie books, whatever it is. When you get one, you get 1,000, and you get them so like densely that I stop like, caring, or
Mm-hmm.
it raises my expectations too high. It really influences my reading in not necessarily a positive way, a little too much. Whereas when I feel like
Mm.
when you watch a longer form booktube video, you listen to a podcast, you read an article, I feel like it's different. You're really sitting with something, you're sitting with someone's thoughts on it, you're listening, you're thinking about it. It's a little slower. It's you can like step away and not feel like you have to go get it or that um you just keep having some idea reinforced because you keep seeing it over and over again. It's a little easier, and it doesn't affect me as much, I think.
Yeah.
But
So
you're
we
in
have
so
talked
many
about
other
this.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
in so many other book spaces, and I wonder if there's anything else. I don't think you're a lot on Book Talk, but, like, if there's other spaces that feel like
Yeah.
that for you.
I'm not on Book Talk, so I can't really even tell you what it's like. Um, I I don't want every single social media platform that I'm on to be inundated with books. I
Mhm,
love TikTok for TikTok. I do not want book related content creeping into my TikTok enjoyment. I want it to
mhm,
remain a book free zone. That's just my personal thing. I just love TikTok for what it is. I don't want to see books over there. I still prefer BookTube over everything. I love long form videos about books. I love when someone sits down and has a 35 or 45-minute video on one book. Like, I don't care. I like a long video talking about books. That is my most favorite type of content to consume. My second favorite are podcasts about books. My favorite. So outside of those two things, nothing really hits that hard. I am on Lemon 8. I wouldn't say I love it, but it's new, so I stick around over there. You know what I mean? I'm just kind of like filling that community out, watching it grow. I'm less and less in the Facebook groups because I they're boring. A lot of they're just boring. Where I'm also finding enjoyment is these various Discord servers that I'm on. That's where I'm getting my book and my bookish engagement with people. That's where I'm having the most fun interacting with other people who love books. It's Discord. So for watching content, number one, BookTube. For listening, about book content, podcast. And then for actual book lover engagement, Discord
mhm.
servers. That's my like top tier bookish jam.
Tried to well, I guess I did join a, Facebook group for the Booker Prize,
Hmm.
or related to the Booker Prize, and everybody everybody was just loving everything a little too much for my liking.
I get
It's
it.
like,
I get
how
that.
does everybody and what I've learned from reading the Booker particularly, and just from making content on YouTube, is that people get, like, weirdly offended when you don't like a book they like, um,
Yes.
and I feel like I'm scared to see what that looks like on Facebook, knowing how toxic Facebook can get.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I haven't really engaged over there, but I just kinda peruse sometimes, will post, see what people are talking about,
Yeah.
but I
It's
find book talk
interesting.
weird. I just find it's too much, and I think that really it's more of a function of it being short ter form content that is, like, the big maybe not issue, but, like, thing that bothers people. It's not that, like, book talk itself or anything the creators are doing or maybe, necessarily bad. It's that you just have this volume of stuff, and, like, nobody needs that much stuff, nobody needs that much noise.
It's interesting because I just ran across this post on Threads, say a couple days ago, and somebody posted about reading A Little Life, and they're basically saying just like how much they hated it. It was just too much. It was just way too much. And then
Mhm,
the comments were like either I hated it too, or I was immediately turned off from reading this book because everybody on Book Talk is holding this book crying their eyeballs out, and it just made me just say immediately no. So I thought that was really interesting. Now, I read whatever I want to read, and I don't really care what other people think about it. I just don't really care. I don't read other people's reviews. I just don't care. If I want to read it, I'm going to read it. I just have to see for myself. I can't take someone else's word for it that it's fantastic or it's terrible. If I want to read it, I've got to read it for myself and make my own, conclusion about it. But those people were very turned off by all those TikTok book talk videos about a little life. They were like, it was just so much crying, like, don't want to put myself through it. And so just a lot of people
Yeah.
were just like, I'm immediately out.
But I think, like, it's difficult to avoid any influence if you start getting book videos on TikTok because there's just so many of them. Even if
Yeah.
you are very determined in your own, like, reading whatever, you're going to be influenced by them, in some way, shape, or form because there's just too many things to not be
Mm,
influenced because the
yeah.
algorithm will just keep feeding you something.
You know what I do when maybe this is bad, but I don't care. This is how I preserve my version of TikTok. Whenever a book video creeps in, I block that person immediately. I block them immediately because I
Like,
need TikTok to know, do not send book content to this account. Do not. Don't do it.
I
Immediately
think you
block.
can block book talk, like, hashtag book talk. I think you could probably block that hashtag.
I have to look into that.
Yeah.
Whenever I see a book video, I just feel like my TikTok just got dirty and I'm so upset about it. I don't want it. I don't want it.
Yeah, so I just thought that was interesting that we're back to this again, and it made me think. I've been, 'cause these things come up so often, the same bullshit comes up all the time. Um, but I just had a thought about it that maybe, like, for me, it's not so much what they're talking about, but the volume with which they talk about it, and how
Yeah.
that then undermines and it can undermine my experience. I guess is what I'm saying.
That's too bad
Um,
though, That's really too bad.
yeah.
Hmm.
Because, like, you want well, we also talked about I know we talked about this in relation to how creating book content has kind of changed the way we read books and how I've I miss back in the day when you just, like, picked something up and you didn't know anything about it at all, and you
Mhm.
just read
Mhm.
it. And part of being so entrenched in new releases and what's popular and, like, things that are being referenced in new books that were old books and all this stuff is you lose that to some extent?
I guess so. When you and I were talking about this, over messages, I really thought about it like for a few days. I just kept popping in my mind. I kept trying to really think about, okay, when I go like to McKay, my favorite place to go for books, when I go to McKay and I am in there for like 3 hours, you know how I roll. Am
Uh-huh.
I like, is everything on some level familiar to me when I grab it? And I really had to think about that. And it is split. Much of what
Yeah.
I see, it and maybe the familiarity is just with like, oh, I know that publisher, right? And I know that
Yeah.
publisher almost always publishes books that are like right up my alley, right? Or maybe it's an author I've already read, and so that's like an immediate grab. But it is split. There are many things that I see and I'm like, oh well, that's an interesting title. Let me just skim the synopsis. Do any keywords that appeal to me stick out? But yeah, half of that time is like, oh, there's some familiar like key point that's making me pick up that book, the publisher, the author. So I think you're correct in that.
Yeah, and it's just it's something that I didn't think about missing. 'Cause I
Yeah,
didn't think that was something that you could miss, that sort of just innocent wonder of picking up a book and being like, "Oh, what's this about?" And just falling into it with no other anything. It has
you
to
know what?
be some
Yeah,
backlist, something that doesn't get talked about anywhere.
yeah. I think also I miss, but also I'm so lucky that I got to experience, and you did too, because we're a little older, is I'm glad that I had many years of being a reader before there was even a thing called social media.
Oh god, yes.
Because that is just a different level of like living your life as a reader and just like talking to your, IRL friends about books and just like having that in-person real-time interaction with other book lovers. I'm glad I had that for many many years before, the world of social media like took over. Because it is different. It is
It
different.
is.
There was nothing to run to post about it. You just
Yeah.
enjoyed the moment and kept it to yourself. Or if you had other bookish friends, you shared it with them. And that was it. That was
Yeah.
it.
I mean, it's like anything in life, it's good or it has good and bad things about it. Like,
Yeah.
it's really nice that we can build these communities and talk and, we have a little community here, you're listening,
Yeah.
we're all together in discourse through the whatever, the ether of the internet. Um, but there was something kind of nice about not having that constant influence.
It was. It really, really was.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
just a little nostalgia for you.
Just a moment, just things I've been thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're new here, something to know, we have a website, tbrlowdown.com, where you can find out everything about us, our annual reading challenge, our little book club. We read a book every other month and discuss it here on the show. Also, every book that we mention that we are currently reading or have read or recommend, you can find those books on our page on bookshop.org, which is also linked on our website. So basically, anything that you want to know about TBR Lowdown is on tbrlowdown.com. Okay,
Mhm.
what's next?
I think one of the things we missed talking about is Little Miss loves a good list. Is the New York Times best books of this 21st century.
You know it.
Naomi is banned from talking about lists
I
again
am.
on the panel because they are boring episodes that you always
Yeah.
want to do, and I find them boring
Yep.
filming them. Um,
Yep.
but I think we can discuss some of the discourse that went around the New York Times
Can I
bestseller list.
just
Not
say
bestseller list.
that
What's it called? 21st century list.
Can
What?
I just
What's
say that I love how they rolled it out like 10 a day? I thought that was so fun. They made it
they
so fun.
they really took a page out of BuzzFeed. I swear to God. They and that's fine. I mean, media is slowly dying, like that kind of media, so they need
Mhm.
to do something to refresh it.
Yeah.
But, it was fun, it was a good time, I enjoyed going through the list, I enjoyed the practice of it, like, oh, you woke up and
Yeah.
looked to see what the next chunk of books was and
Mhm.
share them with your friends. Um, but I know that the list itself has been criticized for not being, diverse enough, for not
Yeah.
being, I
I heard
guess,
that.
so Western English centric. But I also and I'm sure there's some people that have expected us to talk about it, and I haven't really talked about it much on the internet. I don't know
Mhm.
if you've talked about it anywhere. I haven't seen you
Nope.
talk about it anywhere.
Nope.
I
I
just don't
look, I
care.
just did what everyone else did. I made those little charts they allowed us to make, those little graphics, and I shared that on
Mhm.
my socials and that was it. I had a good time. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't really care because I don't think that I think the people who are criticizing the list, sorry, I'm very uncomfortable. I need to get a new chair. I think the people that are criticizing the list have valid criticisms.
Mhm.
I just don't think that I ever thought that this when I saw that they were doing this list, I wasn't like, "Oh boy, there's gonna be a definitive list of the best books of
Right.
the 21st century that comes out in 2024 of all
Mhm.
times, and it's going to be everything. It's gonna be perfect. It's gonna be the best list ever. No one's gonna have any challenge." Like, I
Right.
assumed it was going to mostly suck. Like, in some way, shape, or form, I assumed that it was going to not do what anybody feels like it should have done.
Right.
And I anticipated disappointment and was pleasantly surprised to see that there were a few things on the list that were, not written by old white men
Yeah.
or were translated. I think there was a lack of diversity in general in terms of genres and age levels and all kinds of things. It was
Mhm.
also a really hard ask. Like,
Yeah.
what are you picking? You have
Right.
100
Like
books.
if they
How
would
are
have
you divvying
have
this up?
approached us, how like what who knows what I would have put on that list.
I mean, they did. They allowed you to cast a ballot, and I put 10 books in,
I
and I'm like,
I
it's
did
so
a ballot.
hard.
It was
Yeah.
hard. I did that. You know how long it took me to put my ballot together? A
Mhm.
long time. And then also what kept happening is I kept having to take a lot of books off because it was published before this
Mhm.
time that we're working in, this time frame we're working in. So, it's very difficult. it's very, very difficult.
Mhm.
So, but
I
I
just
still thought it
don't
was
think
fun.
I think lists are, like, fun, but I don't think lists have value, and I think the
Of
problem
course they
comes is
don't.
that so many people on the internet, because the internet likes to be upset about things, get upset about things that don't have value.
Right.
For why? I don't know why.
Right.
There's so many other things to put your energy into,
Yeah.
and I think making a simple, valid critique about something is cool, like, that's fine, but when people get, like, real angry about these little like, in the grand scheme of things, these are little things. I don't really know how much it changes anything other than maybe being able to reference more obscure or, like, marginalized books would obviously give them a boost, right? So more
Mhm.
people can see it,
Mhm.
but I just don't expect that from a New York Times list. Like, I expect you to just give me predominantly old white men
Right.
from predominantly English-speaking Northern Hemisphere places.
Right. I mean, it's the New York Times, but it's also the 503, what does it say? Novelists, nonfiction writers, poets, critics, and other book lovers who,
Mhm,
provided, you know, the books to make up this list.
mhm.
So,
One of whom being Stephen King, who nominated himself.
that was a baller move right there.
And we all know that I love Stephen King. Mhm,
You sure do.
mm. He
So,
really is great at writing a woman. It's awesome. I've never felt that more represented in a book than when Stephen
you
King
felt
writes me.
so seen. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a good time. I thought it, was a nice little week where the book community had some great conversations about the books and everyone had fun, creating their little graphics and whatnot and putting their ballots together. It was a good time. I like the community aspect of it. I like
mhm.
what it did for the book community. We all had a lot to talk about that weekend. It was great. I loved it. And I love seeing like what other people read and what they wanted to read and what they put on their ballot. I loved it. It was a good time.
Yeah, I think it sparked a lot of really interesting, just little conversations between different people in the community. And I enjoyed that. I think that that's like if you're gonna make these stupid lists, that is
Yeah.
an excellent reason to make the list, right?
Yeah.
To have it so that people can then be talking about books because that's the really great thing. Because
Mhm.
I mean, that's why we do this. That's why I talk on my channel. That's why you talk on all the places that you talk because you talk on so many goddamn places. I don't know how you keep up with all your social media. I can barely keep up with mine. Um, but you talking about books. Books are such reading is such a solitary hobby, right? There's
Yeah.
it's a solitary experience, but the discussions you can have after you read a book, the sharing of the joy or the hatred that you
Mhm.
have for a book.
Absolutely.
And then the way that that can bring people together is beautiful. Like, the
Yes.
fact that stories can connect us is wonderful, and so I love when we have these moments in the book community where you have all these strangers on the internet all kind of all working together and doing something. It's
Yes.
wonderful. It's a good time, and sure, the lists are stupid or the list was not ideal, it could have been better. I don't know why anybody thought it was going to be great, but that's just my cynical old lady
Yeah.
coming out, but I enjoyed the other bits of it.
Yes.
I enjoyed
It
what
was
the list
great.
gave us, not the
Yeah.
list itself.
The list was fine. It was whatever. It was fine. Whatever. But man, that was just one beautiful week of just so much book talk. It was wonderful. I loved it.
It was good. It was a good
I
time.
loved it.
You know what
Yeah.
makes me mad, though, that wasn't on the list, and it's not so much that I ever expected it to be on the list, but because nobody ever talks about it, is Prophet Song. Not Prophet Song, I hate Prophet Song. That's not is that
Oh,
what I
the
meant?
prophet. Oh, what do you
The
mean?
Prophets.
Robert Jones Jr.,
Yes, the Prophet.
our one of our dear friends in our minds. I
Yes.
still that I and okay. I feel like that book is
See,
still so
see,
underrated.
look, I got Prophet Song stuck in my brain. I hate Prophet Song.
I feel like that book is so underrated. We talked about this book on TBR Lowdown the year that it
Years
was
ago.
released. Yeah. And That book was so good. We sang that book's praises for a whole year. I lie to you not. Every chance we got, we were talking about that book. It is so underrated.
It's
Like, I
so
don't know.
underrated.
Look, what are you readers doing? Pick this book up and read it.
I
God
think it's
darn
because
it.
it's a slightly more complex story, and I think that's why maybe, this one ooh, I'm gonna miss my chair, that'd be really funny. I think The Sweetness of Water gets a little bit more attention, and they kind of cross a lot of the same themes, and they do it differently, but similarly enough, um,
Yeah.
that I think that this being The Sweetness of Water might end up being a little bit more commercially written, and this is The Prophets is a little bit more literarily written. Does that make sense? I
It
don't
is
know.
just it is just such
They're
a
both very good,
dynamic book.
but this book, The Prophets, one must read it. Please go
One
read it. So
must. One
I
must.
I I'm just disappointed that all these, like, highbrow literary folk don't
I might read
don't
that
get
again this fall. I might read that one again because I haven't read it
so
since we
good.
read it in, what was that, 2021?
I think so. It wasn't 2020. It
Is it on the book of the
must've
month
been
sticker?
2020.
Is it on the back? You know how they used to have the year on it?
It's 2021.
Yeah, that's so I might read that one again this fall and then talk about it again for another year so you people will pick it up.
Yeah.
So underrated. He
It's
spent
just a
so much
well
time researching to put that book together too.
and it's a beautifully constructed story. It's another one of those books where you have to trust the author. He's going to get you there. It's going to seem very fragmented and, the stories are gonna feel very, like, separate, and they're not. This is all gonna culminate in one epic moment at the end that, it's just read it. Just
Look,
read it. Just read
and
it.
we have said this a few times before in discussing this book, but you're going to have to do a little work reading the prophets. You're going to have
Yes.
to do some books take a little bit of work, and I'm telling you now, it is worth it.
Yeah.
It is worth it.
I
Anyway,
think that's why, like, because this is what, the same I think they came out, like, almost the same year, or at least they
a
came
couple
out
years apart, right?
similarly. Yeah, so they're both 2021.
Oh, that
So
was
I
okay.
I feel like The Sweetness of Water might be a little bit less work to read. It's a
Yeah, a
bit
little bit
more
more straightforward.
straightforward,
Hmm.
but this, if you give it time, if you give The Prophets, it's like, give it its moment. Let it do what it's gonna do. Let Robert Jones Jr., like, simmer and tell you this beautiful story.
But also
Is that
trust yourself as a reader to just get through it. Trust yourself as a
Mhm,
reader to like do that work to get to all the
mhm.
good parts. You know what I mean?
It's worth it. It's so worth it. It's such a good book,
Yeah.
and I'm disappointed that I never, ever, ever see anybody talk about it.
Yeah. It's a crying shame.
It
That's
really
what it
is.
is. It's a crying shame.
It's so good.
Yep. We love you, Robert
Justice for
Jones
the Prophet.
Jr.
Not
Right.
for the Prophet. Not for Prophet Song.
Right.
That
Not
was
for that one. Not for
not
that
for
one.
that one.
Mm-mm.
For the
Mm-mm.
Prophets.
Yes. Yes. So good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That just made me want
Oh.
to read it again.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to do a reread. I think that we said that off. Like, I think this is the kind of book that would stand up to a lot of rereads. There's a
Yes, it
lot of
would.
stuff to parse out of this. There's a lot of stuff to, like, look up too. I feel like
Yes.
we were researching and trying to figure out, like, what certain things meant,
Yeah.
even just historically or contextually.
Hmm.
It's so good. If I remember correctly, this also has a lot of biblical stuff to it too. Um,
Yeah. And so much significance about water and just,
Mhm.
you know,
It's a many layered
memory,
book.
ancestry. Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's good. It's
It's
good. Read
fantastic.
it. Mhm.
Fantastic. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. What's next?
I don't know. What you got?
Do you wanna share any books that you read during Women in Translation Month?
No, because I read the Booker Prize.
Oh, that's right. She reads the Booker Prize and yeah, she does that. I don't do that. I am never really excited about that Booker Prize. The International Booker I love, but that Booker Prize, no. I just watch her. I just watch her. Anyway, I think we can do recommendations and wrap it up.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't suggest that anybody else reads, like, if you're not already somehow subjecting yourself to reading the Booker Prize every year, don't. There's no point.
It's too bad.
Maybe read the short list. I
Maybe.
don't know. Or just, like, you watch people like me who do this and every year and decide
Yeah.
what ones sound good to you. I
Yeah.
just always find it interesting when I do these because there's just so many people reading it, right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of what's enjoyable to me is that there's so many people that are reading it, and then as the videos roll out and, like, I get to watch my friends or whatever talk about books and see what they were thinking after I try to film my stuff and then I go watch theirs when I'm done filming them,
Right.
and I'm just, like, so shook by the things that people don't agree with me on, and to the point where I feel like, "Were we reading the same book? Like, did I
Mm.
accidentally read something with the same title, but it's a different book?" Like,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
becomes really interesting. But I
Yeah. I
think
mean, I commend you.
this year's been friendlier in my comments than it has been in past years. Past years have gotten, like, kind of vicious, where people are like, "You're an idiot." Am I? I just didn't like a book.
Yeah, people calm down, okay? Just calm down. Just
Uh,
because I didn't like a book that you like doesn't mean you have to attack.
I mean, I might also be an idiot, but that has nothing to do with anything. That is neither here
You
nor
are
there.
far from an idiot. Far from an idiot. All
Anyway,
right.
do you have a book recommendation?
I sure do. I sure do. And it's The Wall by Marlon Haushofer. That's probably wrong. And
Oh.
this is translated from the German by Sean Whiteside. Um, yeah, this was on my radar for quite some time, and I always look for it when I'm in the used bookstore. Didn't
Mhm,
find it, so I finally ordered it online, but it was fantastic. So this woman who is not elderly, but she's an older woman. She goes up this village to stay in this cabin, and she's with I forget a family member, and I think he's a cousin. Anyway, he's a real persnickety kind of a guy. He's got all these weird, like, he's like a hypochondriac, so he's like prepared, for the worst of things. And they go up to this village to stay in this cabin. And when she wakes up the next morning, he's gone. Like everyone's gone except for the dog that he brought up there. And she's looking around the town, and there's like clearly no one around. And so it's her and the dog, and she's trying to figure out, what happened. And they're like, walking out into, the yard, if you will. And there is just like this invisible wall of sorts. And so she is trying to figure out, am I going crazy? Or is there really something like blocking me from like getting out of this immediate area further into town? But she sees the dog is also, butting his head up against this invisible wall. And through this wall, a little down yonder, she can see like an older man who's like sitting by the lake. And then she realizes he is not alive. So I just want to say that like nothing really happens in this story. But when I tell you I was riveted with watching this woman figure out, first of all, how to survive, how is she going to, grow food so that she can eat? How is she going to take care of herself and this dog? I was just so riveted by watching her learn all these things on how to do things to sustain herself and this dog. And because that cousin of hers was such a like, I got to be prepared for the worst, he had this various books on, like, how to hunt animals and, prepare them to eat, and how to garden and how to do this and how to do that. So you're watching her, educate herself on how to sustain her life. And I was spellbound by every bit of it. So much so, I didn't even realize until like, I don't know, 100 of the pages in, this book has no chapters. I didn't even realize it. And the whole time I was really terrified, like, oh my gosh, what if you get hurt? There are no doctors, it's just you and this goddamn dog. And I was really scared and panicked for her. Like, what are you going to what if you cut yourself? You're cutting down wood to make fire. What if you like hit yourself with the axe? What are you gonna do? I mean, I was so worried for this woman. But she said so many things about the kind of woman that she was before she got to this place where she had to like get strong. not just
Mhm.
mentally, but also like physically. You know, she's got to haul things and she's got to break things and she's got to carry things and push things and lift things. And she just talked about how weak she felt before, but now she's so strong and she can do so many things with her life. And kind of like maybe she was like cast aside before. You know, she'd been married, she'd had her children, they were grown and gone, and then it was just her. But she kind of like was reborn through this situation. I think everyone should read this. I thought it was fantastic. Also interesting to read with I who have never
I was
known
gonna
men.
say, it sounds very I who have never known men in terms of,
Yeah, because I read these back to
subject
back.
matter.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
man, the wall was just really fantastic. I just,
I'll have to find
again,
him.
riveted from start to finish. I don't want to give anything away. I want you to experience it for yourself, but I loved it.
Wow,
Yeah.
I'll have to
The
find that. That
wall.
does sound like something I would like.
Hmm.
So I've already talked to you about this, and we are going to talk about this in a later episode, but I just finished Liars by Sarah Mancuso. Came out
Mm-hmm.
this year, I think a couple months ago. Um, and I love this. So essentially this is the story of a marriage, and it's of a marriage breaking down.
Woo,
And it's
that's my
this
sugar
woman who's
spot.
it's Naomi's sweet spot. So they meet and they are 2 artists. She's a writer, he is like a visual artist. And he kind of sucks.
Mm.
They get married and he does that lovely thing that men do sometimes where they've got that special kind of emotional abuse where they hate being outshone by their wife.
Ah,
Um, so they find ways to sort of constantly undermine her. He's constantly like moving the whole family. They have a kid together. You're in her head the whole time, and you see her rationalizing everything to herself until ultimately the relationship breaks down. And you can just plot the red flags as you go through, and then it's like the relationship breaking down. Um, and it's very it was it's it's relatable, okay? There's a lot of I think there's a lot of women I've thought about while reading it of like, "Oh, I think I kinda feel like I should send this to some people to read." I think
wow.
that, like, a lot of women will be able to relate to moments of this woman's life,
Yeah.
um, the way like, the emotional and intellectual and physical labor
Mm.
of wifedom, the way that everything she does doesn't have as much value in this relationship as his stuff does, um, the way that he just kind of undervalues her in general. Uh, yeah, it's great. It's
Wow.
not happy, but it's great, and I really, really, really loved it. So I can't wait to actually have you read this, and then we can talk about this, so we can talk about it
Yes.
more in depth. But like, um, yeah, I'm just gonna go. So so somewhere around the end of the book, after things have started to fall apart, there's just one that says maybe the trouble was simply that men hate women, and I think that that kind of sums up the entire book.
Well, I've said that before plenty of
Yeah.
times.
Guys, it really but I think it also does a really good job of I mean, obviously, this is biased in the sense that it's written from, like, one woman's perspective on a relationship,
Absolutely.
um, but it is also really good at showing, how we don't really communicate the same way, and whereas, like, I understand everything she's saying and doing, um, when there are times when you see his reaction to stuff you can initially just kinda, like, hate him, which is fine, I don't really like him, but also, what is he really hearing, seeing, and interpreting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because everything we do is in a matter of perspective,
Hmm.
and what the hell is his perspective? What is his point of view on this? Like, what is he really and I think that's becomes, like, in a heterosexual relationship, a very contentious point. Is that
Yes.
we are very different, we communicate differently, we when we do communicate things, we want something sort of different sometimes in return. Um,
Yep.
we react to things in sort of different ways that can be confusing to the other. It's a difficult thing to be
Yep.
in a long-term monogamous committed relationship and then to bring children into it.
Uh-huh.
And then to have any amount of mental disease on top of that, it just becomes very interesting. So
Yes,
I
yes.
do love a book that explores any and all of that, and Liars does a lot of it, and I really appreciate it.
Ooh, I can't wait to discuss this on the show. Okay. Wonderful.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay. Speaking of discussing books, do you want to give the people a little teaser on some of the books we're going to be
Yeah.
reading and discussing on TBR Lowdown?
Yeah, so we had a meeting, guys. We had a look how professional we are.
We had
We
a
had a meeting
meeting.
and we went through and we looked at some of the books that we wanna talk to you about or talk to each other about with you guys. Um, and so obviously we have our reading schedule of books that we need to catch up on and
Mm-hmm.
continue reading. So I Who Have Never Known Men is gonna be talked about, Near to the Wild Heart by Clarice Lispector, but also There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak, who we both love that book.
Brilliant.
Um, I need to read Private Rights by Julia Arnfield. I can't wait so that we can talk about it. We're gonna talk about the new Sally Rooney.
Yes,
Um,
indeed, indeed.
cannot wait. I'm gonna make Naomi read Pink Slime so we
Mm-hmm.
can talk about that. I want Naomi to read American Rapture so we can talk about that by CJ Lee. That's the new CJ Lee coming out in October.
Mm-hmm. Time
We've
of the
got some
Flies by
dark
Claudia Pinheiro.
yes, we've got some dark academia coming for you with
Yes,
Black
we
Dog
do.
and a separate piece. What else do you wanna talk about? There's a
Did
lot
you
on here.
there's a lot on there. Oh, we're gonna be discussing A Good Life by Virginie Grimaldi.
Yep.
Um yeah, and our long awaited discussion on The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck and Whose Names Are Unknown by Sonora Babb. This we
Yes.
read those books during season 3, and we're gonna be discussing them in season 4.
Yes. That should be a very interesting
Yeah.
conversation. We also have
Yeah.
some classics like The Narrows and Song of Solomon and Planet of
Yes.
Wildfield Hall. So we're trying to do more book discussions for you guys throughout the year. And we're hoping to maybe get some author interviews if we can swing them. If there's any authors listening who would be interested in talking to us, we can't say yes to everything, but um, we would be interested in hearing what you got.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a little foreshadowing
Just a
of what's
little.
to come in
Just a
season
little.
4.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for season 4. I think it'll be
Yeah.
good. And hopefully I don't get COVID again, and hopefully you don't move again, and hopefully,
Yeah. All
things
that good stuff. Yeah. And
things
that good stuff.
are a little bit more settled this
Mhm.
season. The
Yeah.
last 2 seasons have been a little bit jerky, but
Cuz
hopefully.
life happens, you know?
Life happens.
Life happens. You got to do
This
life
is
things.
this isn't our job. So
Yeah. It is
we
not.
have we have other commitments. So yeah,
Yeah.
but we appreciate everybody sticking around and yeah.
We appreciate it. We appreciate it. Tell a
Yeah.
friend. So, I think
Tell
we're
a
going to
friend.
wrap up this welcome back episode. Welcome back to season 4. Season 4. All right. That's going to do it for us. Again, everything that you need to know about us is on our website, tbrlowdown.com. And share with a friend. Leave us a review um, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to this podcast. We greatly appreciate it in advance. Thank you. So that's going to do it for us. We are out of here. Bye.
Bye.